But I do think, generally speaking, with all of these kinds of things, fine-tuning, consciousness is another example that's broadly in the scientific realm that people think like this just can't be explained without reference to a god. Maybe they're right, I don't know. But if you intuitively were to step into a time machine and look at some people having this conversation, and you said, like imagine them looking back and saying, gosh, can you believe it? They hadn't worked out fine-tuning yet. They hadn't figured out the constants. Oh, they hadn't figured out the science of consciousness yet. I can conceive of that. Just intuitively, I can see someone doing that. But when I think about my arguments for atheism, the problem of evil, divine hidden, this kind of stuff, I can't imagine somebody looking through a time machine similarly at a conversation that I have and going, gosh, can you believe it? They hadn't worked out the problem of evil yet. They hadn't worked out divine hiddenness yet. I think these are perennial problems. So where you have these scientific arguments for the existence of God, I guess I just have more of a trust that they will one day be explained in a way that won't require recourse to a divine author in a way that my criticisms of religion will probably not be similarly resolved.
We had a great conversation in Austin as you explained to me about the potential historical accuracy or inaccuracy of Jesus' resurrection. Can you go through that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, this sometimes is used as an argument for the existence of God, but I think more successfully is used once you've already established the existence of God to try to establish the truth of Christianity. And that is a bunch of historical facts surrounding Jesus's alleged resurrection that you sort of have to ask what the best explanation is for. Now, you can't historically prove a resurrection, but you can historically prove events and then ask what the best explanation of those facts is. So people will often point to the fact that there was a man called Jesus walking around morally teaching people who was crucified by the Romans, and that a few days after his death was seen, or people made claims that they'd seen him after he'd died. And the question is, how do you explain these facts? The gospel reliability is an interesting question in general, and people will often, on the surface level, say, look, the Bible contradicts itself. It's full of contradictions. And there are some seeming contradictions in the gospel stories. But, of course, what a lot of people neglect to consider is that when we're talking about a text as a historical document, contradictions shouldn't make us think that it's less accurate, but more accurate. If historical sources contradict each other, that's evidence of their accuracy rather than evidence of the opposite. Because if this is a mythical story that somebody's making up, you would expect the details to concur. That is, if you're questioning two suspects in some kind of murder trial or something, and their stories match up perfectly, like to the T, the timings, everything, it arouses suspicion. It seems like somebody's inventing something. Someone's coming up with a story here and trying to perfect it. Now, people have this idea that a bunch of people got together and tried to fool the world into this sort of mythical story of this man rising from the dead. Do you think they would have made the mistake of just including these blatant contradictions? I don't know. In other words, I think if somebody was making it up, they probably would have taken more care.
Is there a term for this?
I'm sure there is.
Right.
I'm not a historian. I couldn't tell you what it is. Right. But we do see contradictions on the minor points. We don't really see much disagreement about the major points. I mean, there is still enough disagreement that I think to arouse suspicion. I mean, I'm saying this as if I'm some kind of Christian or theist. I sort of put on that hat when I'm asked to have a conversation of this kind.
Wow, how interesting. An atheist making claims that would actually support the Bible as a historical document versus treating it as if it's just a book of fairy tales. I think Alex O'Connor he seems to be intellectually honest here. He's not just looking at the Bible and just writing it off. That's very refreshing. Just as someone who loves to have civil discourse about these type of topics. That's one of the things that I really appreciate Alex O'Connor for. I wish a lot of people would try to embody that more, to just have conversations about these topics without some motivation of animosity behind it, you know? I really want to touch on a point where he talked about treating the Bible as if it's a historical document, because, I mean, it is. Christianity seems to get the notion of being filled with fairy tales and kind of taken as a joke. But that's the whole beauty of this whole entire thing to me. Like he said, you can't definitively 100% prove either side in a way, right? Like if you lean into it and just approach it from a agnostic type of mindset and just being open to the Bible, that's really what the story of God and Jesus is all about. Is that God gives you, or Christ gives you, the ability to make a choice. And that's where I think faith comes in. When it comes to, you know, Jesus's resurrection, when it comes to the existence of God, when it comes to what best explains the reality of what we see in the real world, God makes himself ambiguous enough to the point to where you have to make a choice. It's remarkable to me. Honestly, that's the way that I perceive it, is that I obviously think we have an overwhelming amount of evidence to say that. How do you explain all the things that he mentioned that happened in history? Those are unequivocal facts, right? The facts of there's been nobody in history to ever survive a Roman crucifixion. The fact of the tomb being empty. The fact that Jesus's disciples, they were literally defeated by Jesus's death. To all of a sudden make a 360 change and be willing to die for them admitting that they saw Jesus again after he died. To the creed, the eyewitness testimony, like all those historic facts, right? What would best explain why all those things happen? I obviously think that is overwhelmingly points to Jesus Christ resurrecting. I'm obviously someone who agrees that you can't 100% prove that. That's why I love having that, I guess, that hole there to where you have to make a choice. I always just had faith. I've never been a person to just look at it out like it's a fairy tale. I mean, I've obviously had questions about things that have happened in the Bible and had, you know, skepticism about certain things. But I think that on the main topic of Jesus's resurrection, I think that historically we are on pretty good grounds to say that Jesus Christ in fact did resurrect. And I'm not gonna bash anybody if they think otherwise in that. I think it's beautiful from God's position to be able to, because here's the thing, despite whether you can 100% prove if God even exists or not, let's say, and I'm speaking to someone who may be on the fence about it or who may doubt it, right? Like, if God does exist, to me, what more beautiful way than to come down and to live amongst the beings that he created and to die for them and to make sure that there's enough historic trail so that people in the future can believe in these things reasonably. I personally think, in just my opinion, that's a beautiful story to me. And I really like the way that Alex O'Connor discusses a lot of things, just on the basis of just having a civil discourse. I love it. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I appreciate you guys.